Yo, this is
Facts.
Chats, and we are in our home, which is the Qube. It's London home for creators. It's for podcasters, artists, musicians, producers, all of that. It's all about recording your art and getting paid for it.
Ooh. And if you want a free month at the Qube, all you have to do is visit theqube.com, QUBE.com. You'll see that down below, and enter INFACTS into the referral field, and you'll get your first month for free.
Right, cool, yeah. Sweet. Enjoy that. Bon appetit.
Just make it clap.
Make it clap.
Right, you're listening to
Facts.
Chats.
Unpacked.
Well,
Yes, yeah. Here we are again.
I'm coughing now.
Love
This is
it.
because of you.
It's not, man. It's the AC.
I know it's cold in here. It's not even hot outside.
Chill. Yeah, it's a little chill in here.
But I've turned off
The
the
heat would be
AC.
good. But I'm not even going to get up and do that because that's just, yeah.
You a little bit slumped.
Not as much as you. 3 pillows.
I'm chilling, boy. I'm on the
3 pillows
couch.
and feet on the... Do you know what? Next time, I'm going on the sofa.
Oh, yeah, you can, you know. Yeah, I'll allow
next
you.
time, because I don't think I've experienced this
No,
level
it's
of chill
actually-
yet.
You might get some real home truths out of me today. I might just let it
That's
out.
good, because that follows a great conversation that we
know,
had with our latest guest, Felicia Oluti.
Yes,
big up
present our
Felicia
host.
again. Yeah,
Big
for
her
coming
up.
through.
Who, yeah, again, we had to talk about sex.
Yeah, open the gateways for us to just have a great conversation about sex.
Open the gateways.
Any innuendo.
Everything's an innuendo.
Yeah, trust me in if you want it to be.
I know, innit? But yeah, man. And just, yeah, how like creative fields open these conversations, our platform for these conversations.
Mhm.
And yeah, I just think I feel like it's I wouldn't even say a very current thing, but there's just more spaces and places and platforms that are welcoming
No, 100%.
this conversation now, as opposed to the day and age me and you grew up in, where
Super taboo.
you didn't talk about it.
Yeah, it's only you and your friends, and don't go anywhere else with that information.
Exactly.
Otherwise, it's why would you speak about that? Even though
know.
everyone is speaking about it.
Literally. And I think everyone likes to speak about it.
Yeah,
Everyone likes to
Yes.
talk about it.
That's you, whoever's listening. That's you too.
Yeah, exactly. I know you like to speak about sex.
You talking about me or whoever's listening?
No, you whoever's listening, but yeah, but that's me and you. We talk about this shit,
it a
man.
lot.
Like, it's just normal. Like, yeah.
Yeah, it's calm.
Do you know what I
Very
mean?
calm. Like,
What was your main takings from our episode with Felicia?
oh, that's a good question. I think one of them was like where the conversation of sex kind of starts from. So like I was saying, for instance, we didn't talk about it at home. It's not really a
Yeah.
conversation that I grew up in having. And whether that was just because my parents didn't feel comfortable doing it, or because it was me and my sister, so maybe they were like, oh, do we do it in this way or this way? I don't know what conversations they would have had, but it didn't really happen there. However, I also don't think they would have been aware of the jump from year 6 in primary school to what it was in year 7 in secondary school, where all of a sudden the conversations and the narrative around just sex was just strong.
Yeah.
Strong out of nowhere, kind of, or it felt like that for me anyway. And then Felicia kind of going into how in her household is very, very different. It was just like, yo, like we're talking about this from young. You know, there's 3 girls and we're just going to talk about this. Make sure that you have an understanding and awareness about this from early. So yeah, for me, I think that was probably one of the key things of just noticing the differences with where this conversation starts from for a lot of us.
Yeah.
We all have the PSHE video. Great. Great.
Yeah.
But that's why even now it's so different. Like I can just imagine there is sexual health TikTok, for instance. Like that must be a world on
Most
TikTok.
probably. Yeah.
Yeah, for instance, where you can go and get that information super quick. Even stuff like, we kind of abstain from going into porn quite a bit in the conversation, but even stuff like porn, that's way more accessible now.
Yeah, oh, way more, innit?
Way more. Like, I don't even know if Top Shelf magazines is actually a thing anymore. I generally don't know.
You know what was a thing? Well, definitely in our generation, and
Yeah.
I think, was the phone lines that you called up.
Yeah. The numbers on the toilet, or just the stickers that you'd see sometimes.
Yeah, or like even
or in
just
Yellow
like,
Pages.
Like the phone line. I don't know what it was, but
Literally.
you'd call up, and it's you just like to hear a episode of to hear.
That is the bin, you know.
Honestly, but
Can you imagine now?
But I think that, and you know what it is, because we grew up in a generation where parents didn't necessarily talk to us about it, or like maybe some households did. But I also feel like there's that one element of like you want your child to remain innocent. Like, you almost don't want to impose this. Like when is the right time to have that conversation? I guess parents kind of gauge. However, there are ways that you can talk to your children about relationships and sex, but not in such an explicit way. Like there are literal ways, but you need time and you need stuff to do that. And I'll pull up for the actual resources, because there's a resource with Women's Aid where you can have these conversations with like children in primary school through every year group in a way that is, what's the word, appropriate. You can actually do it. But it's like you kind of don't want to like rob your child's innocence in a way by just being like, sex, we're gonna talk about it. Do you know? But then there's also the boundaries as well. Like you want to kind of also respect your own boundaries and respect your child's boundaries, and having a conversation about sex can kind of feel like you're treading along those fine lines of like boundaries here.
100%.
Do you know what I mean? Without kind of, because it's like, how quickly do kids turn around and be like, oh, well, have you had sex? And then suddenly it's not about talking about sex anymore, it's about your sexual life.
Exactly.
But there's ways of doing it. But also, like you said, these times we were growing up, there wasn't social media, there wasn't all these unsolicited ways of sharing content now, where like now it's kind of like, in a way, I feel like adults are having to just catch up, because it's like, well, you're gonna have, like, what are you gonna allow first?
That's the thing, innit? You gotta address it.
You have to.
Something will pop up on Twitter, and it's like, well, it's there now, innit? Like, it's there for the world to see. So you gotta address it somehow, innit? Like, it's a hard thing for a parent. I imagine. I'm not a parent to know, but I imagine of when is the right time. For some people it might be like, okay, maybe when you're getting to teenage kind of age, or maybe when you're really, really young, because it makes sense for whatever reason. But I don't know, like even me thinking now, so for instance, when in your mind may be the right time that you'd want to have those kind of conversations with your own child?
I think, again, like I said, there's ways of having conversations around relationships, healthy relationships, feelings and emotions that you can start having very, very early on. I kind of feel like, and I don't have children, so again, I know it's easy to kind of have an idea, and then when you have a child, it's like, oh, hell no. But I'd even say, like, definitely around like the entering secondary school mark, just because I'm aware that my child would be around in an environment with older children where you can't control the conversations that have been had in the playground. So I'd rather, like, I'll definitely basically create an environment that my child or children can ask me questions without me feeling like, where did you get that from? Do you know what I mean? Just, I want them to feel comfortable enough to ask me the questions as opposed to going elsewhere. So whether it's, rather than me kind of giving them a whole vocabulary of this is this, this is this, this, do you know what I mean? Just being like, do you know what? You're around an age group where you might start to have certain questions. Even though I can hear myself saying this, I feel like I'm in Mean Girls. I'm like the mum from Mean Girls. But it will have to be like that for me. And I know they might find it cringe. And I think it also, again, the dynamics in the household change when there's older siblings.
100%.
So, like, for instance, I have some very just to the point conversations with my brother, and obviously he's not a child anymore. But like, the conversation between siblings is different with the conversation you'll have with your parents. But to answer your question, I'd say around the year 7 mark for me, where I feel like I'll properly kind of be like, right, you're going to hear some things, you probably know some things already. Just to let you know, I'm not going to judge if you want to ask me any questions. It's perfectly normal, perfectly fine. But I want to make sure, like, you feel comfortable. Like, the key word is you feel comfortable in all of this. What about you?
I think around that kind of age as well. It's like, obviously things might change as we get a little bit older, but from what I see from my own experience, and even like TV shows like Big Mouth, for instance, where I'm like, okay, it feels like there is such a graduation socially from primary school to secondary school. And as you said, you're around the bigger kids anyway. So even if it's not your year group or the year above, there's the 16-year-olds who are still there, like the ones who are going to be going to college or sixth form or whatever soon. Naturally, I imagine you'll probably hear of some stuff that circulates around your school or your vicinity. Plus, you probably do end up having some sort of education class, whether it's PSHE or something else. So yeah, around that kind of age where it's like, all right, you're coming into just big people's world.
Yeah.
I would like to make sure that you feel you can chat to me, and I will hopefully will feel like I can chat to you about any of these kind of things as a child as well. But like, yeah, I don't know really and truly, but I would imagine around that kind of time. It just feels like it makes sense, because I feel like it would have, this is all in hindsight, but I do feel like it would have been sick if someone older, whether it was family or just someone very close to me, was like, okay, is that what you're thinking?
100.
Don't do that. Or, that's good. Like, if I just had someone just do that.
Because we're the eldest siblings.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's like, I 100% like wish I had that. Like, almost like the kind of like, not even filter, but that just someone apart from my mum.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Just apart from my actual parent.
Yeah.
Just someone that is like, even if I'm asking a question, it doesn't, because my mum was super, super protective of me. And I know like a lot of her, almost like her way was like, it was fear-based in a way. Like, if I asked something, it would be more like, who's done this? Why? Do you know what I mean? And then I can't actually like, I can't have a proper conversation with you. Like, I can't just ask innocently without you thinking, like, and obviously it comes from somewhere.
Of course, yeah.
But like, I think you have to get a bit realistic. Yeah, it is gonna come from somewhere. Like, I remember, do you know? Oh my god, I remember my mum. Yeah, she had this video in the house, because obviously these are the days and ages of just VHSs, and I think the film was called Basic Instinct. You remember that film?
I've heard of this film. Yes.
The sex scene is famous.
Basic Instinct.
It's basically it opens up with a sex scene.
Who's in it?
Oh, I've forgotten her name. She's a blonde actress. But it opens up with a sex scene. Yeah. And then she goes to like stab him. Oh, you definitely know, because who reenacted it?
I must do.
Was it Scary Movie that might have reenacted that scene? But Basic Instinct, yeah. Lemzi's Googling
1992,
it.
wow.
Yeah. He's Googling it right now.
It had Detective Nick, Catherine, starring Michael Douglas, Sharon Stone.
Yes. Yeah, because she's also everyone knows her for when she's being questioned by the police and she like crosses her legs, like she changes to cross her legs. She's not wearing any underwear. Anyway, I remember I put this VHS on, and I don't know why. I think there was just videos in my house, and I was like, oh, let's find out what this is. Yeah. And it opens up as a sex scene, and I remember I must have closed my living room door. I thought, what the hell?
How old are you roughly?
I think maybe might still have been like probably 6 or something.
Okay, it's like 10ish.
Yeah, and I was just like, what is this? But I want to know more. I want to see more. Like, what the hell? And then I was like, take it out. But like, if you ever, do you know how once you stop the VHS, it stops at
at that place? Yeah,
it never got past a certain point.
Kids don't know.
Literally never got past. But that was like my first kind of like, oh rah. Yeah. What the hell is this? Do you know what I mean? Like, okay. And I could never say to my mum, what is this? Yeah. I probably would have ended up being shouted at.
That's the thing, you're in trouble now. Number 1 for even taking that one off the shelf. Number 2 for watching it without anyone around. Number 3 for even asking the question. Like,
but there's so many things as to wrong.
Yeah, really, you've done nothing wrong. But you can pick all of these little reasons why you might get in trouble for no reason, really, innit? Just because it's now awkward. That's actually all it is.
So, and I think it's more awkward for the parent.
Yeah, 100. Because you're just inquisitive. Like, you don't know what's going on. So you're just waiting for a response. Literally.
So yeah, I think, parents need to get a bit more realistic with just the fact that their children, and I just think adults need to get more realistic with the fact that children are going to, and especially like we said, in today's day and age now with social media and stuff, you just don't know. And the thing is, that's why we need to balance out how people are exposed to it now. Have some intentional spaces where it's just like, it's not by accident. You're not going on your bloody incognito tabs on your phone to look at.
Oh man.
You're literally like, you are going to just like go and listen to a podcast that's talking about sex. Go and like watch a show that address. Like, I remember my friend Mariam was in a show called The Hose. Oh my god, like, and it was all around like just women and their relationship with sex, and like it was a bunch of girls that were going on their trip to Ibiza, and they all had kind of different views on sex. And there was this one particular character that was a lot more kind of just, I guess, forward with it and just enjoyed having sex and that. And then her character actually ended up in a situation with a guy where it wasn't actually 100% consensual, and it dealt with that whole thing of like, yes, you might be a bit more, you know, forward as a woman, and maybe you enjoy indulging in sexual activities a lot more, but you can still, consent is consistent in all of it. And I think that was like the first time I had like explicitly seen like a theatre piece talking about this stuff. And I'm not gonna lie, it hit home for me. Like, I was just like, raw then. Yeah, and these are creative ways that you can address these actual real topics.
100%. And I feel issues. Like those are well, maybe I'm just speaking as someone who loves creativity, but like those in my head are the best ways of doing it, because you can kind of mask it in the production of what's going on, whether it's like a TV thing or a live theatre production or anything. Like, you can mask that, I don't know what's the word for it, but it's just the effect of what you're going for is going to be, it's going to be brought out in a whole different light. Whereas when it's like in school and it's a lesson and you have to sit down and you're like all staring at the teacher, and the teacher's kind of just telling you stuff rather than maybe demonstrating certain things like they might have done in this production, or it just feels relatable because there's a bunch of characters who all of a sudden look and sound like how you would have looked and sounded if you were asking these questions. It just gives it a whole different perspective, because I mentioned Big Mouth, but like, I actually think that's a genius show.
I know you're saying.
Have you watched it?
No, remember you said to me, you would love Big Mouth.
No, it was BoJack Horseman. I said.
Oh
Big Mouth.
yeah,
that's the one.
I have seen a bit of Big Mouth, because that's the one that I thought you were talking about, innit?
Yeah, where they're
like
kids.
All these, they were talking about.
Yeah. Like, it's in my head. That's a genius show because it's just such a an original way of having that conversation around sex, puberty, hormones, relationships, all these different things that they just put into this show, which is a 20-minute, half an hour episode each time. But you see it from the perspective of literally how the kids in year 7, I'm saying, like, they're just horny kids. They're just chatting about sex the whole time, and everything is a sexcapade of some kind, innit? But it makes sense for the context of the conditions they're living in. But it makes it seem so clear and obvious. You're like, oh yeah, I remember thinking something so stupid. Like, you might just think, oh, that girl is more beautiful than everybody else just because she's wearing shorts today, or something ridiculous like that. But like, articulating it in a sense where, oh, that's why that's a silly thought to have, or why she may have felt uncomfortable about everyone staring at her that day, for instance. Just those kind of things. But creativity, in my head, that is literally the way that, like, I feel it's the way that people will learn about this more.
What age group is Big Mouth actually aged at?
I'm not. Adults is what I have in my
that's
head.
Interesting though, because it's like,
because they're kids in the thing, but it's explicit.
Right. So shouldn't that be for, like, okay, maybe not that young of kids, but like teenagers?
I reckon teenagers would definitely watch it though. So yeah, when I say young adult is what I meant.
Well, teenagers aren't really young. Or what are we talking about? 14, 15?
They could watch Big Mouth, definitely.
Well, they're not adults. They're children still.
You know, YA, is that not like teenagers? I thought that's what they call it.
You know what I find? So the reason why I want to deliberately not say young adult is
they're not adults,
when you use the word adult, we have to remember when it does, and I think this is also just the kind of, what's the word? Not when you're treading on a certain territory, is remembering that, like, children essentially, it's non-consensual, and like, it's a different. Children still need to figure out their autonomy and figure out their boundaries and stuff like that. So that's why, because even I'm just thinking of, like, for instance, where, young black boys are being charged with whatever, or something's happened to them, and they always use the language of like young black adult, and it's like you're talking about 15-year-old, like they're a child.
It's a
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think it's keeping that innocence.
No, you're right.
Essentially there, which again I think is so like when you talk about children and talking about sex, you kind of don't want to put that two together, but you simply can't leave it until someone turns 18 to talk to them about sex. It's actually not.
People, like, it's just way too late.
It's too
way
late.
too late.
Like, you actually have to, and there are ways. Like I said, Women's Aid, the Respect Toolkit. Literally, you can download it anywhere, and it's basically for teachers, anyone leading youth groups, on like how to lead workshops around healthy relationships. Because like Felicia was saying as well, let alone do we even speak about the sex, but we don't even talk about the relationships around it. Like, let's come on. Like, you're in school, you start to fancy the people around you. Like, how do you even learn about that? Like, where are you supposed to learn about understanding your emotions? And then even, let's just say you two people like each other and they want to get into a quote unquote relationship. How do you even learn how to have that in a healthy way? And there are ways that you could do it. Like I said, Women's Aid, Respect Toolkit, you can download it. I think it even starts from reception class, where it's not explicitly talking about boy meets girl or girl meets girl, or nothing like that. But it just starts talking about like just like physical touch and like how it's appropriate to touch people and like respect and language that's used and just little things that I guess make it a lot easier for a young adult now or a teenager or whatever. I'll just use a young adult. But like to then inform a healthy view on sex. Because I do think there's a lot of a lot of boys that form a view around sex that's actually very, very harmful. And they almost see it as like sex is something just to take. Sex
for a lot of young guys, I won't speak on behalf of all the guys in it, but I know for a lot of young guys, sex is very functional in it. Where and because even when you first said sex and relationships, those two things for a lot of people don't naturally always come together, which sounds crazy. Yeah, sounds mad, innit? But they don't, unfortunately, because even when it came to, let's say, a PSHE, it was very much about the functionality of what happens if you have sex or how sex occurs, as opposed to what is the dynamic or relationship prior to you actually having sex and post you actually having sex, which is why I said what I said on the pod last time as well, because for a lot of guys it is like, okay, cool, I can separate this action of penetration, come in, and then kind of being done to a conversation we might have afterwards or or the drinks that we might have had before if you're at that kind of age, etc. But yeah, that is something that I think has to be taught from like a young age, the relationship perspective, because that's a whole thing of just friendship, and that's a whole thing of just how you communicate with people and how you understand yourself a little bit more once you know about relationships. So yeah, I feel like, especially for guys, because a lot of guys, they have to, or they feel they kind of end up having to learn about this stuff themselves. A lot of young guys or men now that I know, they went through the process of learning about these things through porn. Like that was their outlet, that was their teacher, just because A, it was reasonably accessible, B, they found pleasure in it, and C, it gave positive reinforcement for a lot of young guys as well, because it made them feel like, oh, cool, like I can get this, like it's very clear in your face. And weirdly, there is like a creative element in some of these porn films that are made, which makes it more compelling for young minds as well. But there's nothing about relationships in them.
No, I'm sorry. I was just thinking about the storyline of most porn.
Oh man!
Someone comes to fix your washing machine, and next minute you got a banging.
House? Yeah, exactly. What? This is a lovely new house. Oh really? Oh, you just happen to have a camera in my face. Oh, you're wearing lingerie.
It's just, and that in itself is why it's so like, no. And we have to remember again, like porn is a whole industry. Like it's not real.
It's the biggest industry on the internet.
It's not real. Like, even if the person's like 9 times out of 10, the pleasure is not real. Like, it's just, it sets this unrealistic expectation. In even like with you even saying a positive reinforcement for young men, I was even thinking to myself, Is it even? Because sometimes it's almost like you have to even like try and match this unrealistic way of having sex, like having to actually, I guess, like firstly not bust for time. Because let's be honest, I'm sorry, but like a lot of men are gonna bust quick. Who is messaging me? Hey, sorry.
Leave her alone, man.
It's my booty call.
Imagine.
But no, seriously, like. Sorry, guys.
I know she's popular today. Look at that.
My DMs are dry.
It's all changed.
But no, like, yeah, I think it just creates a lot of pressure for a lot of people. Because even with me, like, I very quickly learned I didn't like the porn that was the mainstream kind of porn in a way of just like, every time I looked at it, I just felt it was always from the male gaze. It wasn't really about the woman's pleasure. It was just more about the woman being at service to the man, like just being a tool to use for him to do whatever he wanted. And I just didn't find it arousing at all because it's just like, this woman looks like she's in pain. Like, I don't want to imagine I'm that woman. So how am I getting pleasure here? And then even like, then I had to like turn to more like, they literally call it female friendly porn. Like it's more about the woman's pleasure. It's more about the woman's like, just her, and it's a lot more sensual in a way. Do you know what I mean? And especially like growing up, if that's your only way that you're gonna learn about sex, and also it's just the fact that it's like porn, and it's like this like almost like the dark side of the web. It's not the dark web, but it's like you can't get caught going on porn. You can't whatever, but you'll go on it, and then some people end up getting like porn addictions and stuff like this because there's where else do you go? Especially in that time when we didn't have like everything else, like where else did you go to actually learn about sex other than also then through your own experiences? Also, this is the thing, if we want to try and protect children, there should be other ways for them to learn about sex without being involved in an act that actually they shouldn't even be involved in. Like they shouldn't be, because this is almost making them vulnerable now to predators. Because again, we're not even having conversations around like consent, what's right and what's wrong. Like we're not having enough of these conversations where there's too much grey area for just a lot of shit to go left. A lot of shit.
Yeah. And when there's kids or just vulnerable people in general involved, you need direct lines. You need very, very strict lines of no, don't do this. No, you cannot do this, etc. And the thing for a lot of guys, or not just guys, I think young people, is that you go to your peers, but your peers are learning as well. Exactly. Like they don't know what they're talking about, even if they sound like they do. Like they don't. And yeah, you know, innit? Like
just chat shit. You just chat shit.
Of course, chat shit, because you're like, yeah, that's cool. That's when I did that once, it worked really, really well. And it's like, okay, great. Like that's your one personal experience, which might not even be true anyway, but that's the only point of reference that someone might have, and then go and act off of that kind of information. And it's like, all right, how do we open this up where it's not a space where you feel judged as well? I think that was another thing that we were talking about actually,
without judgment.
With the spaces without judgment, where you can open your mouth, you have an inquiry, and it's like, okay, I'm asking this because I genuinely want an answer. And I know that if I go here, some of the spaces you mentioned before, for instance, I can get some sort of return without feeling like I'm an imbecile or I'm doing something taboo, for instance. Like I think that was another thing that we spoke about, the whole element of this being so taboo as well. Do you feel like, because when we think of like rap videos and we think about even movies, I feel like a lot of like Halle Berry won her Oscar years ago
for Catwoman, right?
No, it's Monsters Ball.
Oh yeah.
But allegedly a lot of people put that down to the fact that she was having sex on the screen, basically, and that's why they gave it to her. Like, sex has been in our minds, our eyes, our gaze, for ages. Like, even when they want to sell whatever, you got to use sex or sexy people or people determined to be sexy. What was the question I was using? Oh yeah, do you feel like the taboo of talking about sex is changing, where it's like, rather than it being, we're not going to talk about sex at all, it's more, we need to open up the conversation of what is the healthy sex, because we still haven't done that yet, or you still don't think we're even there?
100, I think we're there, definitely.
Yeah.
That's why we're getting the podcast and that out now. But even like recently in legislation, like schools have to teach about healthy relationships. Now, the extent to which they go, like how deep they go into it and how many lessons they do is up to them, which I know is still something that needs to be changed. But it's being recognised now that we need to have these conversations, because if we're leaving it up to the devices of like an industry, an entertainment industry, their main thing is to get profit. So if it's now reinforcing very detrimental narratives and toxic views and feeding into like gender roles and sexism and misogyny and all of this madness, then their main aim is profit.
Yeah. If they see that's working,
do you know
carry
what I mean?
on racking it up.
Like for time, I grew up watching music videos, especially in the R&B industry. Like it's always your video vixens. Like, and I grew up with a body complex, like thinking like that's how I was supposed to look, because that's the only image I got of women. And these were women that were desired, and like you kind of do find yourself kind of wanting to be desired in some kind of way. Do you know what I mean? That was seen as beautiful. That was seen as whatever. And that's kind of what you wanted to, like, even like if you think about it, in most like storylines of like the things you grow up, like it was always like they couldn't be an intelligent woman. That was the nerdy woman. She wasn't the love interest. It was always the ditzy dumb woman, but she was mad beautiful. So the guys were, why couldn't she be the fucking... And we've definitely started to get more and more of those roles now.
Yeah.
But the narrative very much when I was growing up was the beautiful woman was also the dumb woman that...
But she didn't say much.
Didn't say much. Didn't really have much to say. Didn't really have much to offer other than her body. And that was it. But yet she was seen as like that was power. Do you know what I mean? And even then it was more like it was because it was powerful only because men gave it to her. Rather than she claimed that power, because she wasn't owning it. Like it wasn't like I'm running this joint. It's more like, oh my god, no, you like me. Like it's just like, but even that is a common thing in the porn industry as well. Like what? Oh, when you want to do this. And it didn't sit well with me from a young age, especially me knowing my character. That could never be me. There was even one point I was like,
I'm smarter than this. Like,
I'm smarter, I'm more outspoken. Like, what am I too like dominant for this, or in a way, like, yeah. So exactly, like we can't leave it down to the entertainment industry to educate, and they're not there to educate, they're there to entertain.
Yeah, man.
and really, if they're thinking their main customers are men, they're going to actually put it out. And when I say men, heterosexual men, they're going to advertise it to heterosexual men, so they couldn't give a heck what everyone else thinks, because it's just about bringing in the money. So of course we need to create these other spaces that also, one, actually commenting on this toxicity that comes out of these spaces, like we touched on the podcast men. Because, and in a way, it's like, I'm not shocked by what some of these men are saying. I'm actually shocked that you're actually saying it on a podcast. I'm actually more shocked that, like, because none of these views actually really shock me, because
no, they don't.
There are men that I can tell by your attitudes and your behaviors that that's how you think. But it's like, the madness to me is that you actually think now this is something to put on a microphone and put and out to the world.
Will also uphold as a positive value. Like,
it's crazy to me. So obviously, especially in that, now that we've turned to the mediums now of podcasts, audiobooks, whatever, where just like a lot more people are able to share their perspective, which I'm here for. Obviously, like, you're gonna get just the mad ones, and we need to counteract that. We need to create spaces that actually say, no, that's not okay. This is how it's okay. For some people, it's okay if you just started, like, whatever, you're just learning. We can catch that. Like, don't think that. That's not healthy because this. So, yeah, I think we're definitely there. We've got a long way to go, though. But I think we're definitely, yeah.
No, I'm with you. I feel like we're definitely, I feel like podcasts are such an interesting environment as well, because everyone's always had their opinion about stuff, but now it is like, it's all recorded. So you can hear and see anyone's at any times. And I think the positive reinforcement thing comes in again, where if you say something and people have reacted in a certain way that it makes it feel like that's a good thing that you said,
yeah,
you're going to feel like, yeah, what I said was right. And I also feel like within the podcast industry, maybe this is slightly off the subject, but it feels like when you say something, you almost feel you have to double down on stuff rather than just acknowledge, okay, that might have been wrong because there was an alternative viewpoint that I've now heard, and You kind of have to stick with your guns, and I said what I said, and it's recorded, so yeah, I'm just gonna hold on to this forever. But you can, you're allowed to change your mind, kind of thing. Especially when you've been educated on something.
Yeah.
Like, that's especially when you should change your mind, if anything. Yeah.
No, but you know, with that though, and like while you're on the, because like podcasting is very much, and you know what's funny though. Let me finish my sentence. I'd say podcasts are kind of like a newish thing. However, I remember years ago my mom kept telling me about podcasts. Like she was listening to podcasts like time ago. And I think, people kind of do think only people who you have to have a really strong personality. And therefore, if you have a strong personality, you need to have really strong views.
Yeah.
And yes, in one sense, because I guess, you're also thinking about your brand and like just who you are as a person, as a presenter, as a whatever. But I think then in that case, at least have other people in the room that have different views to you, as opposed to just getting in a room with loads of people that think the same thing as you. Or even if they don't feel comfortable like challenging you on that. Like, or at least going, I don't know about that. Because then you do kind of end up creating these two spaces that like you got one bunch of people saying the completely other extreme. You got another person saying the completely other extreme, which I guess going back to like Paris in a way of like, then it's like people got to be more discerning with who they listen to and what. But then also my thing is, especially when it comes to sex, is that as much as it's also like kind of, because even like Felicia said as well, like she's not going to call herself a sex expert. I don't even really, I mean, I guess a sex expert is someone who really understands like the body and like it's the science of sex. And a lot of it is like when you're actually having sex is preference. It's like what you personally like, your own experiences. And I think sometimes when you start to go into that muddy field where it's like, well, it's not even muddy, but it starts to get muddy when now you're losing the idea of consent in that. And I think I've heard a lot of people on podcasts, they're talking about things or that they have a particular view and it gets a bit like, my brother, that I'm not gonna lie, but that's sounding a bit rapey to me. Do you know what I mean? Like it's sounding a bit like oh, I don't care because if she's gonna do a madness with this, or it sounded a little bit misogynistic to me. Do you know what I mean? Especially like, what did I hear recently that I thought, oh my God, I think it was guys talking about Jada, the whole, and I don't even want to go into this whole the clap situation because it's time ago now. But like, just this view, a lot of people have an opinion on Will Smith and Jada Smith, like whatever, cool. They've chosen to be very open about their relationship and the dynamic of it and whatever. And I do think obviously the more you are open, it does open more of a door to people having an opinion
of course.
On it.
Yeah,
of which do you need to share the opinion? That's down to you. Not every opinion you need to share.
Yeah.
But I've definitely like, there's certain men that I think just don't have any respect to women like Jada, because almost like, how dare you, even though you're in an open relationship, but whatever, but how, or even like basically how dare you speak so openly about the shit you've done. Which actually, when I think about, men do that shit all the time, bro. Like, men actually do that shit all the time.
As in, talk about the shit that they've done?
No, actually, men are out here. Whether you're in an open relationship or not, you're married and you're moving mad. Or you slept with a person that, if you think of the proximity of how you know that person, is her madness. And men they're not getting condemned the same way. People have so much energy to condemn Jada Smith to the point where they actually just dislike her, to the point where I'm like, do you even like women? Like, it just sounds like this deep embedded hatred where now you're sat on a podcast and you're talking about how I will never let a woman do this to me and move mad and sleep with this person and then openly speak. But then you're missing the thing about you in an open relationship. And I don't know, I just feel like it becomes almost like a fest of just misogyny a lot of the times, these podcasts. And then you kind of think that complete extremes of that is a super feminist podcast.
Yeah. That's almost like, let's be the complete antithesis of what's going on over here. But which I understand that reaction.
Yeah, but then to also just get back to why that I even went into that, talking about consent. Because then it's almost like, oh, then, you know, there's certain women that almost deserved it. And then we kind of end up in that almost territory. We were like, because when you are going to talk about sex, there's a line called consent, and on the other side of that, it's abuse, it's rape, it's non-consensual, whatever. And it's like almost people tend to think certain people deserve that, and it's more like your attitudes, and that's when it just gets a bit muddy. Which that's why I'm glad, and then there are more, I guess, factual podcasts where it's actually like, regardless of how you feel or think, there's something called consent. Yeah. And that's the bottom line. I actually don't want to hear anything else. Yeah. Consent, say it with me.
But that's why you see that super powerful word. That's why the relationships thing is one of the most important lessons, where, as I said, it's friendship, any kind of dynamic or any kind of relationship. Consent is important, whether it's consent to how you want to be spoken to and how you speak within that, consent to physical touch, all of these different variables that you have. And without it, you don't actually have an established safe relationship. So you need to have consent, and I think young people especially, we can really teach young people especially from early, A, to understand what it is, and then B, to be able to practice it properly.
But you know what I find interesting with this?
Go on.
I feel like a lot of young people are robbed of their autonomy over their body from a young age, from the simplest fact of, you know, when it's like, oh, hug this person, go and hug them, and you don't want to. And even like it's stuff in school where like you might have felt uncomfortable or something, or like maybe a teacher's talking to you a certain way and it's like you're not allowed to speak back. Like this whole thing of like, if we're gonna build a generation of young people are allowed to assert their boundaries, then also if they assert those boundaries onto you, you better respect that then as well. But secondly, it's like you have to teach young people to assert their boundaries, and then just respect those boundaries, because there's a lot of, and this is also why the respect toolkit and stuff comes into as well. And I remember I saw a book actually, I can't remember what the author was, but it was for like children, and it was called Where Hands Go. Right. And it was about understanding like that your body is yours, and people can't just touch you willy, like anywhere, whether it's touch your hair, and I think we need to allow young people to have boundaries, basically, because then it's going to be a lot easy. Because I think to be honest with you, and I'm not saying like I had any mad experiences when I was younger like that, but I only really fully understood what boundaries were like at a later age. Do you know what I mean? I think it's so important to teach young people that like you don't have to hug anyone if you don't want to. You like, if you're feeling uncomfortable, you're allowed to say you're feeling uncomfortable, because we kind of drill it out of them, but then yet we expect them to suddenly not understand this in a relationship. How does that work? You see,
because one of the things when I'm thinking about kids going to hug people or feeling uncomfortable, I'm thinking a lot of these kids, because they're so young, because I'm thinking like young kind of children, like 3 or something is in my head, and about 3 years old is in my head or something. The articulation of this is uncomfortable or I don't like it is usually just in either tears or just like, just some sort of kind of noise more than anything.
Like, no.
At 3?
Yeah.
I
think
don't know.
Like 3 or 4.
Like, you know how to talk, obviously. You know how to speak. But a lot of the time, it's not like I can explain why I'm uncomfortable. I know kids. Like, I remember, but are they explaining why they're uncomfortable?
No, I think, again, no means no. So if a child says no, take that as no. I remember when I was working at like this street fest for like part of my work, and it was like I was on like the stand, basically I was at like the stall where all the kids were coming, and I remember everything I was like talking to this young girl to like help her like create whatever we were creating on that stand, and everything she was like, no. I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this. She was like, no, okay. And I literally said to her mum, I was like, well, she knows no. Like, but respect children's no, and in general respect someone's no. Like, because if I said to my child, go and hug uncle, or go and hug auntie, or go and hug, like, no, okay, she doesn't want to hug you, or he doesn't want to hug you, Just leave it. What's this forcing
Yeah,
hugging?
no, that's fine. When it's like a hug or something, especially if it's like, oh, kiss them, it's like you don't have to kiss any, like all of that kind of stuff. Absolutely fine, innit? But let's say in school then, for instance, where, because I know that in secondary school in particular, maybe not in primary school as much, but secondary school, everyone's kind of like learning boundaries and stuff like that. In terms of like a teacher-kid dynamic, do you think in terms of kids trying to establish boundaries, so if they say no, I'm not doing this, miss, or no, I don't want to do that, so whatever it is, that's still something that's like, okay, cool, let's leave it at the no, or there's a point where it's like, why don't you want to do this? Like there needs to be an explanation at some point.
I think definitely you can have that conversation, but I do feel like there's definitely teachers that don't care for young kids to know. They don't care for the students to know. They kind of just see them as you're being difficult. And I think, again, when you go into in that environment of school life, you have to remember that some children are carrying things. Well, every child is carrying their home life into school. So sometimes actually, and the thing is, I know teaching is not easy, and you only have a certain amount of time to deliver so much, and it almost becomes a little bit unrealistic. But I'm sorry, like we're dealing with children coming into a space now that maybe there's something about them constantly saying no, or maybe there's something going on that needs to be unpacked. And how do you create that safe environment to fully understand, rather than like almost making them feel guilty or shaming them for saying no? Now, I'm not saying that like some and I've definitely sometimes just wanted to be difficult, like I don't like it, I ain't gonna do it. No.
Yeah.
But even still, like, this whole idea of you can never chat back, or you can never... Like, you know what I think about as well? Uniform, yeah?
Okay, yeah, go on.
So there was definitely... Obviously, I went to a girls' school. You had the option of wearing trousers or skirts, right? I know that there was other schools that the girls had to wear skirts.
Yeah.
Like, they actually had to wear skirts.
Yeah. Even in winter and stuff.
Yeah. Like, they had to wear skirts. Like, it was more like, you're a girl, so you need to wear a skirt. And obviously, and I think definitely now people are understanding more that like some people just don't feel comfortable wearing skirts. Like there might be some young people that identify as another gender or whatever, but they just don't want to wear a skirt, and they're now being told you need to wear a skirt. And I'm now thinking, what does that matter with education? You're already teaching someone that like basically their body, they have no right over it. Like they have to wear what you say. And especially now, if it's coming more down to the politics of like who they identify as or what they identify as, I don't know, it just becomes this ground of like, are young people not allowed to have boundaries? Are they not allowed to have a line when they're like, no? I just don't understand. Are they not?
Yes, they are. And I think when it comes to the school thing, I think it's more just this. Our school systems needed a change for a long time, innit? But fundamentally, especially the idea of uniforms, that really just comes down to, okay, we need you lot who come to this place to all look uniform. That is that is the basis of a uniform, to make sure we can identify you are part of us, and if you don't fall into this mode, that means you might be either a problem or be someone of concern that we have to start looking out for in a different way. And most schools don't want to have to do that. It's really just a way of making things very, very easier. But even going further back, it's more a factor of schools are there so then you can influence people to be into the factory system.
Yeah,
so it's like
to
manufacture. To manufacture them into the factory
it's
system.
Indoctrination.
Basically, and that's where like old principles like that of, okay, if you're girl, this is what girl looks like. If you're boy, this is what boy looks like, or dresses like, etc. They're still there. Like the idea of having uniform, I know that people always have this, but it means that there's no arguments or clashes because people don't get bullied because of like there's pros and cons, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I think that the fact that there's barely any schools that don't make you wear a uniform still means we're still having like very early conversations just about like expression more than anything.
Definitely, because even you talking about uniforms is a madness, because not only are you saying that like your children have to wear this uniform, you're also charging an arm and a fucking leg. Because I remember back in the day, back in the day, it would be like, yeah, they need to have like a navy blue jumper, and then a lot of the time my mom would go somewhere else and buy it cheaper because it was cheaper.
This school shop over here
charging so much. So really, it's not really about there's no shaming, you know. No, it's a business. It's a business. So almost like stripping people of their own form of expression and their own identity is now all part of the business. But then even when you're met with now, because it's still very, very gendered, it's very gendered. Now when you're met with the idea of like maybe a young woman who doesn't want to wear skirts, now it's a problem. You think they're being difficult, but now I find that so harmful as well, because then they already in this world, we're still only, I think, kind of getting used to this idea. And I think I said women wearing trousers is not a madness, but now obviously a man wearing a skirt, I mean, there's still a lot of people that would be, what is going on? No. Do you know what I mean? Like, and even that's just clothes. That's just fucking clothes.
But it's cultural. That's actually one of the main, because even just across the border in Scotland, something like a kilt is very, very normal. There's actually African tribes well, not tribes, but there have been African societies whereby people either men hold hands, for instance, or men have worn skirts and stuff like this. Like this happens, not just happened, but currently happens as well. And it's not given the same stigma or perspective that we have here in Britain. So a lot of it is like, okay, these are morals that we're still holding on to, whereas we don't necessarily need to. Like, don't get me wrong, I wouldn't wear a skirt just because I don't feel I want to wear a skirt. But like, it's there, it's there. And if someone is, it's actually not a thing where I have to look at them now and think, no, this is the end of the world. Like, you've done something crazy here. Like, you actually haven't.
But you're really so right though, and I feel like definitely a big part of like our views towards sex anyway in relationships are also very cultural. So, and I think especially with the British culture is there's just certain conversations you don't have out loud. Like, but even though when you've seen with a lot of these period dramas, they're absolutely caning it down in the background. Like,
all that we know from history is that they loved it.
Exactly.
So like,
do you know what I mean? And it's so interesting that it's like something that's so natural and actually really so beautiful, because it creates life. Like there's no like this whole idea of can't ever think about the fact that your parents had sex. Like how like obviously there's IVF and stuff like that. There's obviously other ways, but still like it's a very, very natural thing. And it's just really sad that a lot of us, well, not even a lot of us, but some people will live their whole life just not fully being able to like fully explore that due to shame, stigma, lack of education, even the concept of like marriage. And the thing is, I understand why people love marriage, and it can be a beautiful thing, and I don't want to take away from it being a beautiful thing at all. But like when it comes down to all the rules and like stuff like you could no sex before marriage, and it's just like I feel like that in itself can inform people's views and opinions on sex. Like almost like, how dare you even have a conversation about sex when you're not married? Like I remember when I was watching Bridgerton and I clocked in it, like none of the girls, even though they got married off very young, but none of them even knew how babies were made, because no one spoke to them about sex before they were married. Like what the hell is that? Like, but so I'm adult enough to get I could get married first.
But you can't know what happens when you get married.
Do you know what I mean? Like it's very unrealistic. And I think basically a lot of us are uncomfortable with having the conversation, and therefore we just kind of say, no, we're not going to talk about it. And that's led us to the point we're in now.
I feel like a lot of that though, minus Bridgerton, because that's from like a set a while back, but even those kind of practices and perspectives are here today. And I think a lot of that actually comes down to what are you expecting this person to fulfill within a marriage, and what are you expecting this person to fulfill within a marriage. Most of the times if it's a woman and it's someone who has been told you cannot not have sex before marriage, it's fundamentally to say you will be a child rearer or a child bearer, sorry. So that's the only time you're actually going to end up doing it. It's not because it's going to be fun or pleasurable or anything like that. It's more, again, it's that functionality of, here you go, this is why you'll do it, this is the end result. Once you do that, that's a great thing. If not, it's a waste kind of thing. And that is actually something that maybe in the Bridgerton era was ubiquitous, where it was that thought of not even just having sex in marriage, but like bearing a son. Even like that's a big thing. You need to make sure as a boy you give me. I'm like just
to carry on the family name.
It's stress.
Women were just waste.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a quote unquote a waste, isn't it? Like those kind of perspectives are things that unfortunately there are sects of society who still hold on to these kind of values. Like
exactly. And then even with that, we're speaking from a very like heteronormative lens. Like we're actually just only speaking about heterosexual like relationships there, which even still, so you can even imagine like where did a young gay boy learn about like exploring yourself in that way? Where did a young lesbian woman like there's so much that's left in the dark that actually people seem to think because it's not spoken about, it's not happening. But I think so many people are being put in danger because it's not being spoken about. And also like how valued do you feel as a person in society if like almost the way you identify as and like that you're not seeing it anywhere, like you almost feel like you've got to hide the element of you, and like how dare, because one thing, if a straight person can't even like just come out and talk about their sexual life, then it's like, oh my goodness, how dare a heterosexual like someone who's gay, talk about someone who's trans, there's so many like just barriers that we need to break down and also come to the terms with. Everybody has sex.
It happens, guys.
Whoever, like, and you know what? So there's an exhibition coming on, but it's actually, by the time this comes out, it will already be on. It might have even finished at the Barbican, called Our Time on Earth, and it's all around. Basically, it's about the climate emergency right now, but a more positive light of the things that are actually being done.
Nice.
And like the fact that it's not such a depressing conversation, basically, that we're all done out here and we're gonna bun up and things are gonna end. No. And there was, and I can't remember the name of this because they've basically collaborated with a lot of like worldwide practitioners and what's the word, protesters, I guess I'd say, around the climate change and like the environment. And there was a quote by one of them, and I wish I could remember the name, saying that nature is queer. And this whole idea of like, when we even think about nature, do you think nature's so hung up on like whether it's a man or a woman or basically nature is very fluid. It will respond to however it needs to respond. Like let's just say if you go into a forest that maybe a tree's fallen down, plants are gonna grow around that. Life is going to continue, and it's this idea of fluidity and just carrying on, just being whatever. Maybe yes, you're supposed to grow straight, but now not even like in a sense like that. Maybe you're supposed to grow like forward, upwards, horizontally, whatever it is, but now you're having to whatever. But it even made me think that like there's so many, I guess, isms and schisms that we put in the way of us just being that stops us. That's why we have to almost have these conversations to be like, yeah, because yes, people just have sex and it's okay. Like, why do we put all these fucking barriers? Like, I feel like I'm just venting. Like,
no, you're right. Do you know the
mad.
only thing though? Because nature is queer, quote unquote. The thing I have in my head is that that's us trying to humanize nature.
Yeah, I know,
still,
innit? If
even
that's not
then,
even a
I'm
thing.
like, yeah, I'm just like, nature's actually nature. Like,
It's
it's besides us here or not, it's gonna do its thing. It will move fluidly. It will reproduce. It will like do so for itself. Photosynthesis existed before human beings did. Like, that's going to happen. Like what was it? The water cycle. Do you remember that?
No.
Learning that in school, like how the clouds,
yeah,
precipitation, and all that kind of Again, it will have like like.
And do you think the clouds are ever going?
What's these people saying down here? What? It's looking mad.
No, but you're so true. But I think, it's just all these ideologies that we have, that are just stopping us. Because essentially, it's like, even if we look at probably the age of man, and when I say man, I mean like humans, and you can always see, like, back in the day, I think just a lot of people are more sexually free. And I know that there's, like, obviously with that, you know, there is precautions and stuff that need to be taken. And we've definitely, like, there's evolution and stuff like that. But then I think, like, in most things, it comes down to the power. And, like, right, how can we control people? How we can separate people? How can we divide people? Then I do feel like there's a lot of power in restricting someone from, or like suppressing someone's sexual needs in a way. I do think that there's a certain
100%, because
there's
all of
a
a
power
sudden
in that.
you also end up feeling like you need to channel that some other way as well, whether that's in a healthy way, hopefully, or a very unhealthy way, unfortunately, sometimes, because it doesn't disappear. Like that sense of wanting to, whether it's express or release or do something or act or move, like that doesn't disappear. Like either it becomes something of frustration or you just need to release it somehow. But yeah, I think we live in a weird way whereby no one's actually got it right yet. And like we've been trying as people for a very, very long time. But I feel like because we have got to the point where we have such big, we can call them communities, I guess, countries essentially, but led by such minute groups of people, we have very, very stringent ways of thinking about these things as well, which is why, yes, we can sit here and have these conversations, but someone next door might have a whole different conversation. Like, but there's one person who's going to be at the top of all of the podcasts and says, let's go this way. And then all of a sudden, that's the narrative. That's the key narrative. Again, like we saw in music videos and stuff like that. As soon as there's a narrative that seems to quote unquote work, we're going to go in that direction. I think a big part of it is having like these separate, almost separate groups that are devolved from something like right at the top, where we can have narratives that are shared amongst these groups and then filter into separate communities rather than just, all right, everybody here, this is what it is, because it's the blanket way of living. It's not at our benefit. Like we can see it's not working for people anymore. Like this stuff is having a detriment on a lot of different stuff.
Because even when I was watching The Principles of Pleasure on Netflix, I
need to watch this.
Yeah, you need to watch it. And me as a 29-year-old woman was thinking, I've actually, this has been my body for 29 years. I've not even known it properly. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's so much. And I think there was even like a quote, not even a quote recently, but I was just even having a thought of like, so early on, we're like told to learn about all these external things, but could we name every part of our body?
Absolutely.
Could we name every purpose of, and then even not just our body, then every purpose of nature? Like we are, what's the word? Not what do you call them? Like organisms, but we're all part of something. Like we are existing on Earth with all these other organisms that have, every single one of them has a purpose. And we're so, I guess, fixated on sometimes a lot of things that are artificial that we have no knowledge of are just our natural world. And even that's us. We're natural beings. Like the things in our bodies have been made for a reason, including our sexual organs. Including the clitoris that is only there for pleasure. So tell me.
Here we go. She's up, guys.
Tell me why I can't honor that. Because truly, I've been made a whole part in my body that is just there to give me pleasure, and I'm not allowed to explore that. No, I'm not saying I need to be flicking my bean left, right.
Give it to yourself, man.
But still, and it really, and the thing is, the whole concept, which I love, that Netflix, and I do think it's testament to the time we're in now, that is a documentary. Like that is, it's not porn. Like the only way, like even like what Felicia was saying with erotica, like these were like the only kind of spaces that you could learn or talk about sex or whatever. And I think a lot of the time, especially when you're younger, you may go to those spaces actually just kind of wanting to learn more than like just see it. Like you just want someone to explicitly talk about it. And this podcast very much was talking about how just we deprive ourselves from pleasure, like it's a sin, like it's shameful, like how dare you, like you actually have access to pleasure anytime you want.
Whenever you want. Just take a moment.
Do you know what I mean? But again, with the main words, like as long as there's consent involved and it's safe and whatever, then fine. But especially women, like just in so many angles and aspects, like we've just been kind of told we're not allowed to have pleasure, and that's why there is this orgasm gap as well. Like we're not even allowed, like we don't even understand what brings us pleasure. Like, and even if you do want to explore that, you're seen as a major freak, and it's like you go into another category of women. But even on that as well, where we're failing our society and where we're failing generations as well is that we don't even really understand what intimacy is as well. Like I actually think, and I even know from my own experience, sometimes you think you're craving sex, but actually you're craving intimacy.
Yeah.
You actually just want to hug.
And it's just a closeness from someone.
You just actually, you don't
someone
want
outside
to.
was like, sometimes you just want to call someone and you just pillow it. I was like, rah, but it makes sense.
Where are those spaces that you talk about that?
True.
Where do you learn about that? Like sometimes, and I do think
that's
a lot
the
of
relationship stuff though. Again, where what is a healthy relationship? Like just learning what those things are. Because sometimes just call up someone and be like, "Yo, I'm just chatting to you because right now I would love to speak to somebody."
But then how do people understand that when one, they've not no one's explicitly spoken about those moments that are, I guess, not even around sex, but they fall into that bracket of intimacy, relationships or whatever, where someone's not going to think they're doing that because they want to have sex with me. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it seems like those, even when you experience those moments, it's somehow linked to sex. So, like, you can't separate that in a way, or like, it has to be, like, even like, again, like what Felicia said about a man and a woman being friends.
Yeah.
Like, that has to somehow end up being sex, or even like, and you know what, this point hit me as well, that like even just moments with your friends where there's more like physical touch, like your friend just playing with your hair, and that shouldn't be a thing of like what's going, do you know what I mean? It's just, why does those moments of like intimacy always have to be in like not an environment, but in a relationship where there's sex? Why?
It's a good question. Why? Because in my head, why would I, even your hair, for instance, why would I play with your hair?
But, okay, so one thing about me, I actually have, like, I don't want just anyone touching me.
Yeah, okay. I was using you as an example because I'm thinking of the dynamic of my friend, but a female friend.
No, but no, I've got a guy friend, and when we were very, very hungover, but he was staying at my house. Obviously, nothing's ever happened between me and this guy. Nothing will happen between me and this guy because we're literally friends. And literally, we were just chilling on the couch. I don't know whether I'm going to be cancelling myself saying this because I can only, how dare you? But literally, I just started playing with his hair, and then I was like, "Oh, do you mind? Like, is it going to be weird?" He was like, "Nah, like I actually love it when people touch my hair." And I think the more, I guess, in a way, you make that a little bit more normal, where it doesn't have to exclusively exist between two people who are sexually intimate. Then, and I'm not saying that now it's like every friend must touch your hair. Obviously, again, consent, understanding people's boundaries, whatever. But, and I think there was a post saying, like, with your friends, sometimes express a bit more physical touch, because actually, I think then we're breaking down this stigma of like, oh, if I just like touch you here, does that mean? Do you know what I mean? Like, obviously, again, consent. Some people might be like, don't touch me, which is fine. Yeah. But why? I get, because we don't have these conversations. It's like, do you know what I mean?
With the conversation, then that's a very like one-to-one kind of conversation.
Yeah,
as opposed to let's all talk about this. It's like, okay, you and me as a friend, not just you and me, but who, person A and person B, we should talk about. Yeah, you don't mind me just playing with your hair, for instance, and that person being like, "Oh yeah, no, I like it," but it's a very one-to-one conversation as opposed to a general conversation, is what you're saying.
Well, I think even just opening that up and being like, "It's a thing," like let's see, okay, playing on the hair, because I think also that has a lot of connotations to like flirting or whatever. So even it's not even that. Like, even if it's a case of when you see your friend, and I feel everything I'm gonna say, people are gonna be
innuendo.
Okay, let's just say even between girlfriends, like if I see my girls, generally, okay, we might do like the French kiss on the cheek, but like what if I actually just like kiss them properly on the cheek, like, and sometimes I do, like, because generally, but even if we just normalize those moments there. Like, one, that might be some people's real love language, that actually that's how they feel really appreciated. And that love languages don't just exist in the sexual intimate environments. It's not just that. Like, we have love languages amongst our friendships as well, and how we like to feel appreciated. So, and it's even like how maybe like words of affirmation is easier to do with your friends than maybe to do with your partner. Do you know what I mean? And I do think it's like we almost start to put these ways of communicating, I guess, our affection towards someone as like, no, that definitely, because even when I was saying like one of my brother's love language, because I was obviously explaining to him what love languages are, I feel like I've got to do a lot of these like tutoring sessions with him, and definitely physical touch is one of his. And he was like, but obviously not like from you or mum or da-da-da. And I was like, Jay, you know that physical touch isn't just about sex. Like physical touch could just be like, a hug. Could just be like, are you okay? And maybe just someone puts your arm around you. Like, it's not just that. And I think we're so scared of like the physical, something like this must mean. You know?
No,
but I think it's because a lot of us, we don't get it enough that the only space that it happens is in a sexual environment. And now you kind of only put that down to, now this either feels mad awkward because I don't want to have sex. Do you know what I mean? Or it's like, this just must mean that we're now. And it's like, no, we should normalize that. And the way some of these conversations can help is just being on a general thing of even almost just learning from like other people, like actually, that's really fine. That exists over there in a really fine way. That's not problematic. Why is it problematic to me? I don't know. And then you start to have a lot of conversations with yourself, like, I mean, if you still choose to come out of it like, hell no, don't touch me.
But once you've had the convo, of course,
and I think just remembering that a lot of this is also what we've been exposed to in terms of like what we deem as normal. It's only what we've been exposed to. Hence why if there's other cultures, like I was mentioning, well, I think when we're talking before, but like polyandry, I think that's what it's called, where like women have more than one husband. Now that, to some people, that might seem alien because you've not been exposed to that. Because culturally, especially over here, it's not really that accepted. It's not really that known.
At all.
Exactly.
Like, it's not even like kind. It's definitely not.
So therefore, we deem it as there's no way. But having these conversations, which again I have to keep putting, as long as there's consent and everyone's happy and no one's getting exploited, then you can learn that there's other ways of being, and we don't have to subscribe to this way of being. Do you know what I mean?
Of course. And remember, this country is an old country, but fundamentally, everything we go by goes back to. And I won't put the blame necessarily on Christianity, but that's where like a lot of the values come from, the church, essentially. Some of them have been secularized and changed and adapted over time, but like fundamentally it is the idea of that's where no sex before marriage comes from. That's where one man, one woman comes from. That's where like all of these values stem from, essentially, like a long time ago, with what now many people, not everyone, but many people might call dated, because they don't live by that way on a day-to-day basis. Maybe they subscribe to some of the beliefs or not, but like it's just not there ubiquitously for them on a day-to-day. There was something you said earlier that really made me think about, it was pleasure. That was it, the idea of pleasure. Because I was watching, do you know who Sadaguru is?
No.
Okay, he's a guru.
Okay.
He's a guru, and he's a really good public speaker.
Okay.
One of the things that he was actually talking about was kind of how he even got into the position of following the idea of bringing joy and ecstasy to people. But the way he says that he even came into that in himself was that when he was young, there was one time that he was literally sitting on a hill or something, and it would have been about 4 hours, but he said for him it felt like literally about 15 minutes. But within that moment, he wasn't doing anything except feeling pretty much everything internally inside him. And yeah, the reason this came to my mind is because when you mention like the understanding of the body, like most people don't, and that's just because our bodies are super intricate and very, very complex anyway. Like even when it comes to the I don't know, penis, clitoris, anything like this, there's all these other things that are attached to it and they connect all the way through your whole body, etc., etc. But like the idea of being able to stimulate yourself and provide a sense of joy or pleasure, let's call it joy or pleasure, but let's say pleasure for yourself, is something that we're constantly being kind of shown it has to be external.
Yeah.
Like you need to get it from this food or from this drink or from this film or from this whatever else it might be.
Pay for.
Yeah, you got to pay for it. Otherwise, it's not real. You know, you get what you pay for kind of thing. Like, but no, everything pretty much starts from inside you first.
Definitely.
And if you understand, oh, I can actually find my own sense of pleasure from myself. You're not running out there to go and be like, oh, please give it to me, I need to find it from this source. But it's that Paris, that discernment that you would have of like, oh, I know what it is that creates that pleasure for me.
Yeah.
And I know if I go over here, then if I do want to externalize it, these are the kind of ways of which I can do it. But that initial internalization is what a lot of people have to go through first.
Yeah, exactly. And like even like what Felicia was saying when she asked you, like, do you know what pleasures you? And it's like we're not. It's almost like, when are we given that? I guess you must. I guess we shouldn't wait for someone to say, go find out.
Yeah.
But I think there's so much power in someone almost saying to you, learn about your body. Like, and I know we've had our science classes, but to be honest with you, I think you could probably do a whole year of just straight up learning about the human body. Learning about probably way longer.
Yeah.
But the fact that, like, actually, if anything, this is our first home, and it probably is like so connected to why we treat the earth like shit.
100,
That like we have this, and even just the things we eat, the things we consume, just this disregard for our bodies, our natural bodies. That, like, of course, then it's like, then why would we invest in understanding what our bodies can do for us? Like, do you know what I mean?
No,
like,
no,
if anything,
100,
when, like you said, when we're seeking this external, I guess, tool to give us pleasure that exists very much in the mind. Like, even with the brain, that is so complicated. But when pleasure happens, like, in the brain,
the
like,
brain is lighting up.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if you knew exactly how that works, and even if we bring it back to sex, and you knew exactly like how much power is in that. That almost, I think, like, it'd be so interesting to see a society where people really understood, like, the power of your own body, for one, and the pleasure it could give you, but, like, the power of those moments, the power that someone else has to give you that, or, like, to enable that with you, and vice versa.
Yeah,
we
the
might
shared
have
experience you can have from that.
and the shift in, like, how we would see things would be amazing. But then I'm like, that strips away from a whole what's the word, industry of like buying shit to find pleasure.
Of course, but this is it. We have to change it. Like, as soon as we say, do you know what, we're gonna value the human experience on this earth more than the pursuit of wealth or even the pursuit of happiness, because even that, like, gets mythologized.
No, I don't even know.
Mythologized. That's the word.
Yeah. I'm glad you can help me with that one.
Because you start attributing it to wealth and success and this house and even quote unquote American dream-esque stuff in it. Like, everything becomes marketing, and it's like there is so much that we need to know just about ourselves first. Truly. Because we're such a reflection of what goes on outside of us. Like, if we don't, as you said rightly as well, if we don't, and I'm always conscious of how this ends up sounding super preachy, and then you might see someone eating like me eating a McDonald's or whatever, like, because because it's like I'm a human, so it happens. But it is that fundamental thing of, because I don't know my whole body, so I'm gonna eat some shit sometimes, but I don't know it enough, and that's because it's not valued. It's not a thing where I should, because it's not a high enough value in my life at the moment.
Listen, like what you said earlier about podcasts anyway, and like this whole idea of like, you have to say something almost wrong, not even wrong or wrong, but like you have to, like, we're not trying to be that, Lems. Like, this is a lot of the stuff I even say, I know I'm a part of that. I'm so aware. Am I doing, I know I need to do things about it as well. But like, you're so right. And the thing is, it's like, it's what we've been conditioned to believe, to like even only like recently, like even when I was having a conversation with you, like proper like ranting about just, I'm at this point now where I'm tired of scrutinizing my body and like I should look like this, and it's just, I'm fucking over it. Like, and you get to these points and you can't force someone to get to that point. And we're not expecting you listening right now that you must change your ways immediately, but it just gives you an opportunity to think in a different way, or even like that validation that, right, I'm not the only person that thinks like this. But like, even with me, with my, I got to a point I was like, I'm so over this. Like, I'm chasing something that I'm either wanting to be in environments where I'm not valued. So why do I want to please someone that doesn't like what I actually look like? Well, I could actually, and again, culturally speaking as well, like if we are thinking about women's bodies, and especially now, like the idea of beauty changes so much because it's in the eyes of the beholder. and if the beholder is the media, then it's gonna change every 5 minutes.
They say
a minute ago it's size 0, now it's all BBLs.
Curvy,
do you know what I mean? But like, you can't keep chasing just these whatever.
Trust me.
Listen, go where you're appreciated.
That's a big thing.
Go where you're appreciated.
Go where you're celebrated as well.
Do you know what I mean? Trust me. We're not gonna like, and I think the more, because I do think we're in an age of awakening right now. I do feel like whether it's more just we're exposed to more other people's ways of thinking because of the internet, but I do feel like a lot of people are just starting to think, hang on a minute, why are we like this? Hence the conversations we're having around sex now. I think we're learning the detriment it causes, if that's the right terminology.
Yeah, detriment
it causes to not have these conversations. Because also, nothing changes by not speaking about it. Like this whole idea of if we just don't speak about it. Same like with racism. Same with misogyny, sexism.
You gotta shake the tree.
Domestic abuse. Like, it's not gonna change by just not talking about it. Actually, you have to talk about it.
Yeah.
And there's a way, like have positive conversations around sex that allow people to learn. Maybe even correct them on some bullshit.
That's it.
But also empower people to remind them that, like, firstly, you have the autonomy over your body as well. But secondly, like, don't feel ashamed. Like,
facts, innit? Yeah, there's no and you will get stuff wrong. Like, trust me, like you will. Just like every other thing in life. Like,
literally.
I think Felicia even said it, like, you can't know everything about sex. Like, you're just going to keep finding out new things about yourself, the other person, what you enjoy, what you might no longer enjoy, because these things are going to change and adapt as well.
100.
Like, you're not, what you enjoyed when you're 18 might not be what you enjoy when you're 28.
Might have the
like,
stamina for it anymore.
Facts, innit? You might have to just sit that one out now.
Do you know what I mean?
Facts.
It's so true though. Yeah, like, we just have to, and I think that's also it as well. I think when you're young as well, you have this unrealistic view on it, and not just that being like sex, but like you kind of think, yes, this is going to be it forever. Like, it always has to be this, and like, and even me, like, you know, when you're young and you might look at a couple like, how the hell are they together? Like, or and you don't get it then, and like even now, like when I'm 29, I'm starting to get things I didn't get.
Yeah, 100%. You're like, oh,
do you know what I mean? Like,
it's more than just the sex.
Yeah, and it's not just about the looks, and
they fade, man.
They fade.
At least change anyway.
Do you know what
like,
I mean?
Yeah.
And a lot of people still don't know what they're doing.
That's what you learn in a lot of these conversations. Like, swear down. Like, that's what you're on.
Don't know what they're doing, and yeah, man. But like I said in the episode, which I just want to reiterate, don't yuck someone's yum. If there's consent, and I remember I told my mum this as well, because obviously I'm very open with her about what I do, which I'm a grown adult, and and I think I forced it on her though. I was like, I'm an adult, I have sex. She's like, ah! And then she's like, all right. But you know what's so interesting though? I would tell her, and then she'll want to start telling me.
You've opened it up, innit? The conversation's there now, innit?
Oh no! And the thing is, my mum really started telling me. So I said, "All right, mum, I'm gonna have to just end this conversation."
Boundary, and there is a boundary.
Like, I'm gonna have to end this. And she's like, "Well, you can tell me about yours," but I'm just like, "Mum, please." Yeah. But I had to tell her though, like, because obviously I'd probably say I'm a bit more experimental than she ever has been, and I think that's also the generation.
No, 100%.
You know what I mean? Definitely. But like certain things, she'll be like, eh. And I had to tell her, I was like, Mum, you can't do that. You know, you don't yuck my yum.
You're gonna run with this phrase now.
Oh yeah, don't yuck my yum.
Don't yuck my yum.
If I like it, I like it. Okay. But yeah,
man. Don't yuck the yum. I like that. That's a way to end it then.
Yeah, innit? Watch The Principles of Pleasure, and that's my.
Is that your in fact or opinion?
Opinion. Yeah.
Okay. My in fact / opinion is apparently they've discovered a bubble around the solar system. Not like directly around it, but quite far out around it, where the sun is right in the middle of it. And scientists are basically deliberating about whether that is essentially a huge cell.
Oh.
Yeah. I know, yeah. So everyone who thinks we're a cell, your theory may.
No, my mind, I can't deal with that, Lemzi. This is why I don't smoke weed.
Yeah, no,
my head's
honestly.
starting to do that thing where
Yeah, we're a universe, essentially, you know.
you're selling the same.
And then we're in a universe.
No, I'm
that's
going
in a
dizzy.
universe, in a universe.
I'm going dizzy, Lemzi.
Yeah.
What? No, I can't even. Do you know what? And this is when I sometimes just humble myself. That's why I'm just sometimes, you know, like, Amelia, like, just don't think too much. Like,
Allow it,
just
allow
be.
it,
And I think this is the
allow
whole
it.
principle. Just be.
Yeah, because
Stop. Big
the
people
universe
business.
It's got you. Like, you are, it is you.
A cell.
Apparently. That's what they're looking into, but they have allegedly seen the walls of something that they're calling a bubble around our solar system.
Or
where
the
sun.
Truman Show. It's gonna be.
That was one of the first things that came to me,
The
like
Truman
the
Show.
dome. I was like, hang on a second, who's filming us?
Yeah,
But
this is
is it. Like,
we are a
who knows?
sitcom for another universe out there.
possibly. So, guys, yeah,
Literally.
that is what In Fact Chats is about.
That shit blows my mind though, man. Actually, like, whoa, blows my mind. Mad. Okay. Wow.
Yeah,
I think
I
I'm
know.
gonna have to leave it there just
Yeah,
so I
yeah,
can
innit? Process that.
ground myself again. Okay, we're on planet Earth. We're in London. We're in West
We're in
London.
West, but
we're in the
we're gonna
Qube.
go back to East. But
Yeah.
shout out to Qube in West.
Yeah. We're gonna go back to East though. I'm hungry as well, properly though.
Yeah, man.
That salad didn't do anything for me.
Leaves. That's all I saw, man.
No, it was a bit of
I
prawn.
love a good salad, but that one wasn't.
I do like a good
It's-
salad, but I
yeah.
realise I like to fluff out my salads with like halloumi.
Yeah, no,
With
but it makes sense
avocado,
though. The
sweet
stuff that will
potato.
fill you a little bit, innit? Come
Yeah,
on,
man.
Come on, man.
But all right,
But
that's
yeah,
been
man,
Unpacked
that's
Chats.
Unpacked Chats.
Unpacked. Like, share, and subscribe, please.
Please do, yeah.
Thank you.
Follow us
and,
as well. Brr.
Yeah, and also, yeah, catch us next week.
Bum.
Okay, this is a lazy ending.
Yeah, no.
Are you gonna stop it?
You
Or am I
I'm
gonna-
waiting for you to press it.
Ah!